Welcome everyone to Their Story with Paul Butler. Thank you very much for joining us today. Our guest is well known in our area where I live, Delmarva Peninsula. His name is Jeff Sherr. He is the owner of Apple Discount Drug and several other businesses and pharmacies in the area. Just a great all-around guy. And I wanted to have him on this show because this show is, we see people become successful and we wonder, how did they do it? What was their secret? What was their drive? And Mr. Sherr has certainly had gone through all of that, and he's got a great story to tell, and we're going to listen to his story today. So, Mr. Sherr, thank you very much. We
Thank you.
appreciate you joining us.
And please call me Jeff.
Of course.
I'm a first
Of
name
course.
kind of guy.
You would certainly say that. You've always said that.
Yes.
All right. So, Jeff, let's talk a little bit about your story. First of all, you got into the pharmacy business. You went to pharmacy school,
Yes.
University of Maryland, in Baltimore. And tell us a little bit about after that. What happened?
Well, even a little bit before that, I think everybody has to have a little understanding about myself. I grew up in Baltimore, very loving family. My parents and I had a sister. My parents had eighth grade educations. They were born back in the 19 teens. Didn't know any better. And quite frankly, I didn't know what I didn't have back then. We were a very lower middle class family. I never realized it, really, because there was a lot of love in my family, which I carried on from there. But my parents didn't really push me. I knew that I wanted more out of life. And in order for my parents to survive, we had another lady that lived with us that helped raise me. And she eventually got married a gentleman who was a chemistry guy who taught at the University of Maryland. And he basically was my first mentor to influence me to make something of myself, you know? And and at the time, I didn't know much better, but I wanted to go to Maryland. I wanted to go to pharmacy school. I did go to pharmacy school. Before I went to Maryland, I went to the University of Houston because when I applied to the pharmacy school in Maryland, they put me on hold, which means they didn't accept me or they didn't reject me. I looked at it saying, well, they were waiting to see if there was somebody better, you know?
Right.
So while I was waiting, I had checked into other schools, and one was the University of Houston. I applied and was accepted. I did get accepted by Maryland. I wrote them a letter thanking them. And I went to Houston. My parents were against it because I had to borrow money to do it. But I thought I needed to do it. I needed to get away and experience life. I was there for a year, transferred to Maryland, which is where I met my wife. The rest is kind of history. Got out of school, decided I didn't want to work behind the bench, and decided I wanted to go into marketing.
Okay.
And worked for Eli Lilly from 1978 to 1982. It was a wonderful experience. It taught me so much. Um, and from there, I happened to meet Len Winkleman, who was the founder and owner of what at that time was called Ames Plaza Drugs.
Mhm.
And Len was more or less a maverick. He was the first of the discounters. So he drove everybody a little bit crazy because he would say things like the way that he influenced me was things like, when I sell insulin, and back then insulin was like $6 a vial. Um, I'd sell it for $5.97. What difference did it make whether you made a nickel or you lost a nickel? It's the image that you were after. The
Right.
competition, they were mad at him because they thought he was buying diverted merchandise, but it wasn't. He was just trying to stress a point. His thing was he was so emphatical about customers and the customer service. That was, and it still is to this day, our motto is the customer is first. The customer is first, and the customer is everything to us. And that's why I wind up working on the front counter. And they'll say to me, "Why are you there?" And I'll tell them because of you. We're
Yeah.
here because of you.
Right.
So that's how I got started in the pharmacy business and how I met the gentleman who certainly changed my life.
And I think what you said was a lot of people, our age, and I'll say our age, And maybe some younger folks have gone through where their parents were loving, their parents did everything for them, but their parents couldn't get them to that next level because they never got to that next level. So we all had to find a mentor, and that's exactly what you found in Len. And you've been, of course, you've been with Apple Drugs now for since 1982. Eventually became the owner, and as you mentioned, customer satisfaction has been your number one thing, and that's the reason why I think Apple Discount Drug, especially for people in our area, has lasted so long and continues to prosper.
It's a tough time right now in pharmacy. If you look around and you read what's in the industry, you're seeing Rite Aids close. You're seeing Walgreens are telling you that they're going to close 25% of their stores. So the question is, how are we doing it and they not doing it? And I think part of it is by taking care of the patient, listening to the people, listening to what their needs are, and trying to satisfy that need. And that what we've done. I mean, during the COVID epidemic, the amount of testing and vaccines that we gave out, I mean, we were traveling around the county trying to help people to make sure that they got what they needed. But the industry has changed. And what the industry holds, I don't know, but I always think to myself, I go back to the basics, is it comes around to the customer. It's always, and that's one of the problems that we have today in life is that we seem to be so disappointed with the level of service that we get in so many different businesses.
Yeah,
And I just think it's wrong. And we're going to control ourselves, and that's the nice part about being an entrepreneur is you get to make the decisions.
so people will see you and they'll say, Jeff's been a success. His family is part of the business. His son Zach is now taking over the business. Um, Tell the folks at home who are watching, what are some of the maybe one or two major struggles you had in owning your own business?
Well, number one was the family. To be honest with you, my wife Joanne raised my family, my three children. I love them dearly. Um, but I look at Zach now with two children. Sorry, only two. Uh, with two children, is he's a better father in my opinion. He'll tell me no, but he spends more time at 5:30. He's out of here, and there's nothing wrong with that because he's here at 8:30 in the morning, and at 5:30 he's going home to his other job. The thing that I never missed was I never missed my kids' sports.
Yeah.
And the reason that was is because my father never came to my sports. My father was a furniture salesman who couldn't get off work.
Mm.
And so he never saw me play Little League. He never saw me play football when I was in high school. Um, and I always remembered that. And sometimes you learn from not necessarily what people do, but sometimes what they don't do. And I don't, and the reason I say that about my dad, I'm not mad at him or disappointed at him, but his father passed away in 1917 when it was the pandemic back then in 1917. He didn't have a father. He didn't know a father, so he didn't know any different. And so I tried to learn from them.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So if you were to start, maybe you wouldn't, if you were to start a business today, would it be the same industry or would you try something different?
I don't know what type of business that I would be in. I love pharmacy. I love helping people. That's my passion.
Yeah.
Um, but I think what you need is the first thing is passion. Whatever type of business that you're going to do, you have to have passion and you have to have commitment. I mean, look at you in your business. You know, that business was determination and passion. If you, most people, after a few weeks or a month, they don't want to continue to follow through
Right.
because they haven't had the success that they wanted to have. But the perseverance, it makes a difference. So passion is number one. And I think there has to be a need. There has to be a need for the type of thing that you're trying to do.
Market.
Okay. Um, So, those are certainly the two main things. And of course, the other thing that you have to do in a business is you have to make a profit, or else you're not
That's
going to
true.
be in business, and everything.
That's true.
So those are things. But as far as I love healthcare, I do. But anytime I get a chance, I love sales. I really do. I think once a salesperson, always a
Yeah.
salesperson. Get me in front of a doctor, and I want to sit there and I want to talk to him about things that we do. I just love doing it.
Yeah. And that
So
comes from your background in pharmaceuticals, right? I mean,
yes,
you did the pharmaceutical sales.
yes.
That's
But
exactly
I would
right.
probably sell anything. I have a very good friend who considers me his mentor. He's very kind. I grew up with him, and he's had some issues and some difficulties in the industry in the home improvement business. Um, but I think that would almost be fun, going, selling, sitting down at a person's kitchen table and trying to, show them the benefits and features of what you're actually trying to help them with. But that's a good
So,
question. What would I do? I don't know.
and I'm not going to give your wife any ideas because she might, but, one of the other things I want to talk about and want to talk about on my podcast is, and that many business owners are facing now. I mean, even the big box stores and the major chains is finding good employees.
Oh yeah.
How have you been able to do that?
I think a lot of it has to do. Well, we have an HR, an HR person here who takes care of most of that for us, who screens it and everything. I think it comes down to how you treat people. So, as an example, let me tell you how I start my day. When I come into work every day at this store in Fruitland, which is our main store, and it's probably our corporate store because that's where we have offices, where it's where our bills are paid from. Most everything is handled through here. We employ probably in this location about 86 people. Okay, so a lot of people. Every morning when I come in, I bring a cooler with my lunch and I put it away, put my stuff down, and I walk around the store and I speak to every single person every day. I won't just say hello to them. I'll say something to them. To people that are in offices, I'll sit down in their office and I'll talk to them. It's the kindness that I talked about. It's leadership by example. You set the tone and your expectations follow down to the people below you. And that's how they're going to be able to handle the customer. They're going to do the same thing. I don't want them to do any more. I don't want them to do any less. I just want them to take care of the customer with the same kindness that I showed to them. So I think that is a big reason, hopefully, to find people, but
Mhm.
definitely to keep people. I have employees today that have been with me for 40 years. You know, it's incredible as it is to say 40 years, 25, many people. I'm not talking about one or two, many
Mhm.
people. And I'm proud of that, and now we're starting to do something where we're starting to look for positions. And I'm thinking about doing something in a sense where we can give them an incentive. A lot of people don't like to recommend people because they're afraid if it doesn't work out, it'll make them look bad.
Right.
So my thought is that how about if you make a recommendation, and if that person stays here for 6 months, we'll give you a cash reward, maybe $100 bill.
Hmm.
Good deal, right? But in
Hmm.
other words, they might know people that are similar to them because we have a tendency to hang with the people
Exactly
that
right.
we are the most comfortable with.
Yeah.
You find that good person, and but it is hard to um, it's hard to find the people, but once you find them, we usually are fortunate enough to hold on to them.
Well,
Usually,
it sounds logical because of the way you treat them. The fact that you go around and talk to everybody every morning. I can tell you, I've worked in corporate places, TV stations, a lot of things, and you very rarely get that. But the places that you do get that from a leader, those are the places where employees are more satisfied and they're looking to stay around a lot longer. The other thing I want to talk to you about is even today, even though you're handing the reins over to your son, what inspires you every single morning when you get up?
Well, Len, let me start with Len. Len, back in the day, Len used to say he'd wake up every morning and he couldn't wait to get to work. And
Mm.
Len he was the epitome of a workaholic. I mean, he would work on Saturdays. Our store has always been and always will be closed on Sunday. He was a very firm believer in that. He says, because you can bust your tail 6 days a week, but you always need 1 week, 1 day a week to spend with your family. Whether you decide to go to church or you don't go to church, you spend the day with your family. And he said to me a line that I'll never forget. He says, if you can't make it in 6 days, you'll never make it in 7. I used to love
It's
that
a good
line.
line.
So all the stores, what happened when we first moved down here, there were the blue laws in Wycombe
Yeah,
Cook
yeah,
County. I
right,
mean, if
right.
you wanted to go to the food store, you had to go to Worcester County or Delaware. If you wanted to buy ground beef for a burger, you on Sunday, couldn't do it.
Yeah.
Uh, so yeah, I think that it's kind of an interesting situation. But I forgot the question. I'm
Oh,
sorry.
that's all right. Yeah. So I was asking, what inspires you to get up every day, and you answered that with, the example of the land. I mean,
Yeah, the customer.
yeah.
I just love helping people, and I love when you're out there, and we're also very dedicated to hospice, very
Hmm.
dedicated to hospice. I mean, we're on call for hospice 24/7 for whether it's pharmacy, whether it's medical equipment, whether it's oxygen. Our staff, they're out there all hours of the night taking care of people. And it really is, it's another passion. But to me, my passion, again, is wanting to help people. I do enjoy my time off. I mean, don't get me wrong, but somehow or another, it always comes back that I have to come in here to be with my people, as I like to look at them. I truly, I love the people that I work with.
Now, let me ask you this, because I've been knowing you for a long time, and you've always been one that's, like you said, kind, friendly. But what I also find with people who are super successful entrepreneurs is they have this yearning to serve. Where did that come from with you?
I think you want to give back. I've always been. I sit on a number of different boards. The most recent is I was appointed by the governor for Blind Industries of Maryland, and it was just kind of interesting. Before I got involved in it, I went over to one of the locations that we have here in Salisbury, and I'm watching people sewing that are literally lights out blind. And not
Wow,
only that, they're threading a needle. They're lights out blind. And so
unbelievable.
things like that, they encourage me. I mean, it just motivates me to continue. I just love being able to help the people involved in boards. A lot of times, I have a tendency to say the things that people are thinking, but they don't want to say, and
Hmm.
I'll say it,
Hmm.
because I think as we get older, we lose our filter. As I kind of tell everybody, we
It's
lose our
true.
filter. It is true. It is,
It
but
is.
but you don't say anything to, in a sense, be vindictive or be mean to anybody or to be
Hmm.
hurtful.
Hmm.
You just say things that people just don't want to say, but you say, and I have a tendency of doing that. But I love helping people, whether it's
Yeah,
hospice, whether it's just all the different
right,
boards.
right.
It's enjoyable.
So, for anybody watching this, especially if they're, young or even if they're our age, and they're looking to start a new project or a new business, or, they want to go to college or whatever, what advice would you have to somebody who is, say, 18 years old today? What advice would you give them?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is if you know somebody who's involved in that type of business, I would talk to them, learn from them. I think that if you had the opportunity to apprentice, it's almost when you get out of pharmacy school, there are some people that do want to go into business. And the question is, why don't you go work for a chain? You think to yourself, do I really want to work for a chain? I think if you're going to make your mistakes on somebody else, learn from
Mhm.
other people, learn from what they do right, learn from what they don't do.
Right.
Look at the opportunities that are out there. Also, it gives you the ability to find other people that might be a good fit for you. But I love people that want to be entrepreneurs. I just love entrepreneurs. It's probably one of the things that concerns me in the healthcare industry. I might have somebody throwing darts at me when I finish saying this, but I already said I say what I mean. What's happened in healthcare is so many of the practitioners, and whether it's doctors or nurse practitioners and everybody, uh, they were entrepreneurs. They owned their own practice. Now, very few of them, they've all sold to large medical institutions, like be hospitals, medical centers and everything. And so what happens is they're employees. And I don't think the passion and the drive is quite the same, at least in my opinion. That's why I said somebody's going to throw darts at me, but I don't think it's quite the same. It's very hard to see the medical community right now. It's hard to get in. If you needed a colonoscopy, you might be able to get one in 6 months. I mean, things like that it just shouldn't be. And I don't know whether we just don't have the depth or breadth of practitioners that are out there, but it's a concern. Healthcare concerns me. It really does.
Mhm.
A lot of people come to us because they're not happy.
Yeah.
And we're going to get to the point moving forward in the next month or so when it's going to be time to do the Medicare assessments. And we'll be meeting with, people who are on Medicare to help show them which plan might be the best for them while looking at the medications that they're taking. So a lot of interesting things.
And I'm going to back up to what you said at the beginning is find somebody who is good in that field.
Absolutely.
And because that was my story. Out of high school, I always wanted to be because I was big into music and used to carry the boom box on my shoulder in high school. That's how long ago it was.
Me
But
too.
I wanted to be in radio. So what I did was I sent a letter to the general manager of WJDY. This was back in 1979, 1980, and said, "Look, I'm about to graduate high school and I want to get a head start on everybody else in this field, even though I'm going to college." And they brought me in, had me, just watch. And then 3 months in, they hired me part time. Started doing some, board work, and then I think about 6 months later, then they gave me a little weekend show or something.
That's great.
So it's
Perfect.
I think it's you got to link up with somebody who's successful in your field. Um, and even today is even better because you can have a virtual mentor. They don't have to be in the same town.
Nowadays, you're right.
Yeah, you can talk with somebody on Zoom. I do it all the time with television anchors and reporters who want advice on how to become better at what they do. And, they send me their reel and I critique it and then we talk about it on a Zoom. So it's so easy to, but I think that's an important part though, what you said,
It
Jeff,
is.
the fact
It,
that they find yourself some type of mentor.
and it's funny because I remember back after I got out of high school, and my this gentleman who married the lady who upraised me, he recommended that I go work in a pharmacy. And he knew somebody. It was a Reed's drugstore back when Reed's was around, and it
Yeah.
was in Baltimore at Edmondson Village, and I went to work there for him. I remember I made $1.65 an hour. Uh, well, until they moved me into the pharmacy, and then I got to wear the white coat that snapped
There
up
you
the side and everything, and then I
go.
made $2 an hour.
Wow.
But actually, it's where I really cut my teeth and learned from people that were successful.
Hmm.
And then my involvement with I'm involved in a national pharmacy organization called Epic, and I've been on the board since the inception, and presently sit as the chair for the
Hmm.
last 9 years. Um, and the industry has changed so much. Um, just nowadays, you're getting to the point where there are some contracts that pharmacies aren't accepting any longer. I don't know whether you realize this or not, but probably 30% of the prescriptions that we fill daily are either at a loss or at cost.
Hmm.
Okay. So it's one of the things that pharmacy has a problem with nowadays because, you think to yourself, well, wait a minute. That's just losing money on the cost of the medication. It doesn't cover your expenses. But at the
Right.
same time, God forbid, if you make an error, you're liable for that also at the same time. So there are, beginning probably toward the end of this month, probably about a week ago, there's going to be one of the plans that we are not going to be, Apple as well as Epic are not going to be participating in. That's
Mm-hmm.
Express Scripts. It's a big
Hmm.
one. And because you can't accept contracts when they're paying you below the cost.
Wow.
You can't,
Yeah.
not going to
Yeah.
make money. Remember, number
Yeah.
3 was you got to make a profit. Got to have passion. There got to be a need, and you got to make a profit.
That's right.
So
That's
there's a
right.
lot of things are changing in the industry. But again, having that person who's going to teach you, why don't you want to learn from a winner? Do you
Mm-hmm.
want LeBron James to show you how to throw a free throw?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. That's
So
exactly
people
right.
that are good.
Jeff, with us time winding down on us, I want you to talk a little bit about your companies so that people know, where they can patronize.
Well,
Of course, Apple Discount Drugs here in Salisbury, but tell us a little bit about some of the other uh, businesses that you have.
well, we have um, we have a store on the west side of town, which is also an Apple Discount Drugs over on Nanacoke Road in the Food Line
Mhm.
Shopping Center. We also have a store in Snow Hill, and we opened that store back in 1999. Um, Edge Hill, who was sold to Rite Aid, said they were going to close their store. The town came to us, and we decided to open up something. We never thought we'd make a lot of money because there's not many people in Snow Hill, but we thought the
Mhm.
goodwill would carry us well.
Mhm.
Um, I think probably the thing that I'm proudest of, other than the reputation, but it's more of how we interact with the community.
Mhm.
The community is so important to me and to us. This is my community. So when I think about things that are happening at PRMC, I think of that's my hospital. This is my community. So we really try to support in any way that we can all the different organizations that we do. Um, I just think it's part of giving back.
Mhm.
Again, you don't see little league teams that are sponsored by Acme. At least here in Salisbury. I mean, but we have a little league team on the west side of Salisbury.
Right.
We have one in Fruitland. I mean,
Mhm.
we support them, and because that's what it's all about. It's all about our community.
Right.
I feel
Right.
very strongly about it.
Well, that's why you've been in Apple Drugs and all your family and all the employees. You guys have been so successful over the years and continue to be successful because of your standing in the community and how you treat your customers. And I've always appreciated your friendship throughout the years. So we really appreciate you and thank you for taking the time to be
Thank
on
you.
my podcast so we could hear your story because I'm sure it's going to inspire someone.
Hopefully, it does. I think all the time we're not going to save the world, but we can certainly save people one person at a time. And you just never know what kind of effect you'll have on people. And you want it to
Right.
be as positive as possible. And
Yeah,
uh,
it's one of the things my dad told me. He says, and he told all of our kids, he said, look, and just like you said, you can't save everybody, but maybe what you do can inspire one person or two people. And he used to be a teacher. And, after he passed away, I had so many people come to me and say, your dad had so much influence on me as a, sixth grade reading teacher, you know, back at Berlin Middle School back in the day. So,
oh yeah,
yeah. So you just never know who you're going to touch. And especially with you too, being at the counter. I mean, there could be an elderly person coming up and they're just like frantic, don't know what they're going to do to be able to afford something, and you're able to calm them down. So it's just amazing, what you and your company do. So we appreciate you.
Well, we try to have fun also. I mean, I think we've all worked very, very hard.
Yeah.
And so we try to laugh. I'll have to one day, I'm not going to do it on this podcast. I'll have to show you one of the, one of our pharmacy techs brought in her wig.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And because I told her that you're like a chameleon, have a different hairdo every day. So she brought one in. She says, "Would you wear it?" I said, "Absolutely." So I
Mm-hmm.
wore her wig, and of
Wow.
course, and I did it really more for morale.
Right.
Everybody chuckled, everybody had a good time, and that's what it
Right.
was all about. Work hard, play hard.
Yeah. Hey, Jeff Sherr, thank you very much, sir, for your time. I
Thank
appreciate
you, sir.
us being able to hear your story on our podcast.
Thank you, Paul. Stay
You're
well.
welcome.
Thank you,
Have a
sir.
good day, everybody. We'll see you next week.